We're going to be joined now by a guy that wasn't calling that game. I don't know who's calling that game. He had a great voice, but I like Josh Suchon's voice even better. Now, he is the play-by-play voice of the Albuquerque Isotopes. And Josh, your game, you called it. To me, I'm looking at an umpire behind home plate, and there's a robotic strike zone. How did it all go down?
Let's start with this. If you didn't know that a computer was calling the action, you would have had no idea. You would have had absolutely no idea. There's an umpire, and he delivered either strike or call instantaneously, the same way that he would do if he was making the decision himself. So that's the first thing. There's probably very few people in the stands that even knew what was happening. And, you know, I was really curious, how fast would the umpires get the call? And number two, if there was a blatant pitch that was way out of the strike zone that was still called a strike, or if there was a pitch right down the middle and it was called a ball. There wasn't anything blatant. There were some calls that were right on the border that were very questionable, and I'm sure some pitchers were unhappy and some batters were unhappy, which happens. But it looked like any other game, and once again, I think very few people in the stands even realized that the umpire had a thing in his ear that was telling him ball or strike.
And it was immediate, right?
Immediate.
There was no pause for him to wait for it. It was automatic.
Yeah, there was a couple of times where maybe because I was hypersensitive to it, when, you know, and even as I'm calling the pitch, it's a strike, you know, or you're waiting and then,
Right.
you know, and you're almost waiting for this extra long pause, and then, nope, it's right there. It's right there happening.
Yet, and so the players knew that the robotic strike zone debuted last night. Yet, were there batters that were very upset with a call? You said a couple guys were like, oh, it's borderline. Were there upset hitters in this game knowing there was a robotic strike zone?
Yeah, so in just about every dugout that we've been in leading up to this moment, there has been a kind of like a sheet that gives you, like, this is what the strike zone looks like. They show Jose Altuve at the bottom. They show Aaron Judge at the top. They tell you that if any portion of the baseball hits the strike zone, it doesn't have to be 51%. It doesn't have to be 50.1. It doesn't have to be 1%. If any sliver of the baseball touches the strike zone, then it's a strike. And we definitely saw some calls that were like that. I went back and looked at it on StatCast, and I'm zooming in with my computer, trying to see, okay, did it really just barely clip the outside? And apparently it did. You know, for those of us who have watched tennis and we look up and we see there's just this tiny sliver of a tennis ball that's up there on that video board, we go, okay, you know, that ball was in. Very similar to how this operated.
That's a great comparison. Yeah, I love that. And correct me if I'm wrong, wasn't Chris Bryant making a minor league rehab start? Did he play in a game that you were calling in the PCL?
Yeah, he played yesterday. He played again today. In fact, you know, he did a little media scrum with the media here in Salt Lake City before the game. I had a chance to ask him about it. And actually what he brought up is what we were just discussing about. What if there should be a little bit bigger portion of the baseball that has to hit the strike zone instead of just any portion of it? Maybe it needs to be, you know, I'm making up the exact numbers here, but 5% or 10% or something like that. He said that he did not have an opinion going into it, that he was curious to see what would happen with it. So I didn't get a chance to talk to him after today's game to find out what he thought of it. There was definitely numerous batters that looked back at the umpire and kind of shook their head. I'm sure there were some pitchers that looked at the umpire and shook their head as well. But this is the new reality for everyone in the Pacific Coast League. So either you adjust quickly or you're going to get passed by.
MLB, get ready, because this thing is coming full force. Josh Suchon, thank you so much, man. I appreciate you joining us here on MLB Tonight.